Minutes of saying on my Facebook page that I'm going to interview our guest today, I had like about 30 or so questions, and they kept coming. And as far as questions to our guests, and more specifically from a group that I'm a member of, which is County 4-1, I welcome you on the Power Breakfast Show. He once, or perhaps hasn't said it directly, but we all know that he's gunning for the top seat. And of course, that is a question I will pose to him directly. His name is Peter Kenneth, the Member of Parliament for Gatanga and the Assistant Minister for Planning.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you.
So where do we start? Let's start first with, are you running for the top seat? You've never really directly said it, but a lot of speeches that you have been recorded and you've seen in public, those nuances are there. So are you running?
Well, I think I've left no doubt that you are as to what the intention is. I've not announced it formally, but I will.
Okay. Why are you saying you will announce it at a time? Why is that also a strategy?
Yes, it's part of a strategy. We need to know when the elections are going to be held. As you know, I've said I want to stick with the Constitution, which says August next year. Mm. You do not amend the Constitution to suit institutions.
That's true. That's true.
You actually need to work on institutions to suit the constitutions.
Can we fix it? Can we fix the institutions? Do we have the time? Do we have the time also to inform and educate our public in terms of this new way of voting?
Yes, of course we have time. Mm. Every time you keep changing, what guarantee do you have that they will stick to the new change?
Right.
These are things that you have to look at it. But we went out there to the Kenyans and said, we don't want to do it in December because of festivities. We want to do it in August. Why are we chickening out now?
Absolutely.
So I've stood my ground very firm that we want to do it in August. So yes, I've told you and I've made it very, very clear that I'm not seeking to run as a member of parliament. I'm not seeking to run as a governor. I'm not seeking to run as a senator. So I've left no doubt as to what the intention is.
I see what you mean.
Yes.
Today we're going to do this very differently. I'm not going to ask him my own questions, which of course I have many, but let me just leave this to you because you've sent so many questions, and more specifically from the Facebook page, County 4-1. However, of course, the SMS number remains 2442. Please send your questions on that number 2442 that you'd like us to ask our guest today. As you've heard, he's saying he's left no doubt that he's gunning for the top seat. I want to take you to Simiyu Robert, and he's asking, there are three things that are very pertinent in this country. One, of course, is the economy as far as the waning shilling. We've seen the Minister of Finance putting systems in place to try and curb it. There's also the issue of health. There's the issue of young people in as far as opportunities to access that wealth is concerned. His first one is the dream of health for all by the year 2000, as conceived at the Alma Ata conference in '78, died over 10 years ago. Do you have any plans to revive that? And if so, what?
You know, Jimmy, the health system worked before. When I grew up in Eastlands,
yes,
the best health facilities were actually city council facilities.
Yes, I remember that, yes.
You know, Jericho Health Center used to operate for 24 hours. You need not have gone to Kenyatta National Hospital. Mm. But over the years, the facilities got overwhelmed by the rising population.
Right.
So for me, we have to go back to the basics. What are we seeking to do? We have an opportunity now with 47 counties.
Yes.
Are we able to replicate facilities like Kenyatta National Hospital in a modern time in all the 47 counties with better equipment, more personnel, and more drugs?
Right.
So that you can be able to accommodate healthcare facilities to the people within the counties.
Right.
Because if you have a referral hospital at county level, then you can be able to trickle downwards.
That's right.
And that is what I would be seeking to implement.
I see what you mean.
Yes.
Looking at the disparities or the discrepancies that are there now in terms of funding, in terms of regulation, in terms of security, like we read in the papers today, the CID director was questioned by a committee in Parliament, and he mentioned some of the gaps happening, drugs being imported, some disappearing, no follow-through in as far as that is concerned. Talk about measures in terms of protecting, for example, businesses that pertain to pharmaceuticals, not making sure that drugs disappear. Talk about also human resource, which is in abundance, but we are not using that resource. And of course, like I said earlier, funding.
I think the issue of funding is not a major issue.
Right.
Jimmy, 8 years ago, government only collected 180 billion from taxes.
True.
It's collecting 650 billion today, 8 years later. The mistake that we have done is to have a large government,
Yes.
have recurrent expenditure that exceeds our actual collection of taxes. So if our collection is 650 billion,
Right.
our recurrent expenditures are 680 billion, which means we are even borrowing to finance
spend.
our largesse.
Right. Right.
For me,
Right.
the issue is to just look at the budgetary system and make sure that any expenses that should not be incurred are not incurred, so that you can recoup those expenses to development issues and basic issues.
True.
As you know now with the new constitution, certain issues are actually part of Bill of Rights, including
Yes.
healthcare,
Yes.
education.
Yes.
So it's very important that we implement this constitution. And any government that would like to serve its people must actually ensure it runs its current affairs in a measure that it will save enough money to put towards development and not recurrent expenditure.
Well done.
Yeah.
Before I ask you Matthew Wanjala Makanda's question, there's an important component in our Bill of Rights which talks about consumer protection. Many people argue that that hasn't really been given the strength it deserves in terms of thinking first of the consumer. Any thoughts on that?
I think
Is
on
there a
consumer
weakness in the-
protection,
Yes.
what we need to do is also to allow lobby groups for consumer protections
Right.
to come in place. Because in developed countries, lobby groups have
That's
actually come to act in place of the regulator. Because what do you do if the regulator is lax? You know?
True, yes,
So
yes.
we need to encourage consumer lobby groups to come into place and to play that role.
I see.
So
Is
that
that on
they
a
can
policy
also be
level or is
part
that
of
as
the
a
watchdog.
leadership?
Of course, if you look at the Healthy and Safety Act,
Yes.
there are protections, but how fast do we implement
I see
them?
what you mean, yes.
We normally come after the event when the damage is done.
That is true.
But you want a consumer lobby group that will talk before the issues come into the shelves in a shop and raise their voice.
That's true.
Yes.
Well done. Matthews Wanjala Makanda from Nyanza. My questions to PK are the ones, assuming that he was elected the president of Kenya, what steps will he take to stabilize the forex market? We've seen that what the minister has done. Would he do the same to stabilize the interest rates regime and stabilize internationally injected inflation that we are witnessing? I have two more questions, but ask him the first one. Are you watching me? Matthews?
All right.
Okay.
Let
First
me
one.
put it this way. The shilling can be hit by both internal and external forces.
Right.
It's hit when the cost of fuel goes up
Yes.
because we are net importer, so we import fuel, the shilling depreciates. It's hit by external forces like recession in developed countries. Right now, the Euro crisis.
Yes.
You know, Greece,
Yes.
Ireland, Portugal and Spain are all suffering. It's causing panic and jitter in the markets in the UK, and it's causing a strain to sub-Saharan currencies.
Right.
But as a country, our macroeconomic framework remains very, very strong.
That's good.
Our problem is that the government has had appetite for borrowing domestically. What they should do is actually, cut the expenditure into size so that we do not have to borrow from the domestic market. Because the minute you borrow from the domestic market, interest rates also go up,
Right.
the inflation goes
Right.
up.
Right.
So it's a question of checking our recurrent expenditure and ensuring we do not borrow so that we show up our shilling. Mind you, Kenya remains a net importer,
Yes.
not a net exporter, which means we must always be very careful, very, very careful that our shilling can collapse if we are importing more than we are exporting.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
We've got industries then, I hear tea still doing very well. The figures were up this year despite vagaries of the weather.
Yes.
But we've got, of course, other industries that play a key role in as far as safeguarding that shilling.
Well, if you look at tea,
yes,
you look at coffee,
yes,
you look at floriculture,
yes,
those are the three key things that bring lots of foreign
Yes.
exchange. But it's not enough to cushion what we are spending in importing.
right, yes,
4, we talk about tourism,
yes,
talking about 1 million tourists. We must now start thinking bigger. What is 1 million tourists
1 million
for a
tourists?
beautiful country like Kenya?
that's true, that's true.
That's what Oxford Street gets on a hot summer day, right?
Oxford Street.
Yeah, just 3 kilometers of shopping, right? So we need to think of how to widen the scope of getting up to about 3 million tourists.
Right.
Then the spiral effect will be very good, first for the shilling, but also for people who supply to that industry.
Absolutely.
They will create more jobs.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
We'll have the mama mbogas, you know,
Yes.
selling more
Yes.
mbogas, more nyanyas, the poultry farm, you know, the pork farmer. That's the way to go.
Absolutely.
But we seem to be so content just talking about 1 million tourists.
2 million.
Doesn't make sense to me.
I see what you
Yes.
mean. Talk